Hello, welcome to Truth Behind the Showcases, your global fashion retail and supply chain podcast. Today, Thursday, May 14th. A Mediterranean sourcing origin loses ground in Europe's biggest market. Birkenstock takes a tariff and geopolitical hit in the same quarter. Luxury is tearing up its own store network. And China's factories are pricing in Christmas before summer even starts. I'm Sedat Sezer, breaking down the news and insights you need to start your day. Let's get started. Let me start with a data point that, if you are running sourcing strategy for a European retail group, should be on your weekly dashboard. Türkiye's share of the EU apparel import market fell from 11.7% in 2023 to 9.2% by the end of 2025. And it happened while the total EU apparel market was still growing. Türkiye was one of the few major origins that didn't ride that wave. The countries gaining ground, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, are moving product into the EU under preferential tariff regimes that a nearshore origin simply can't match on basic price. But here's what makes this more nuanced than a straight competitiveness story. Turkey's per kilo unit value in the EU is now the third highest of any origin. The volume loss is happening at the bottom of the quality band, not the top. And on the textile side, fabric and raw inputs, Turkey held its ground as the EU's second largest supplier. That didn't shrink. This matters for a sourcing team reviewing their Mediterranean mix. The story isn't that Turkey is becoming less relevant. The story is that it's bifurcating, losing on price-sensitive CMT volume, holding on quality-driven categories. If you are chasing the cheapest FOB, you are already looking at the wrong map. Which connects directly to what's happening with raw materials, because the cost pressure isn't local, it's global, and it's coming from two directions at once. Cotton has moved roughly 30% higher since the Middle East conflict escalated. Polyester and petroleum-derived fibers are up close to 60%. What that means on the sewing floor, yarn prices across most segments have moved 12 to 28%, depending on the category. Spinning mills with raw material coverage bought early are sitting on a temporary advantage. Garment exporters without it are absorbing compression and will keep absorbing it until buyers agree to reprice. Most buyers haven't. And spandex and the PTA, the feedstock behind stretch fabric and polyester, are telling the same story. Input costs are moving hard, selling prices are barely following. The margin squeeze is real, and it's working its way down the chain. And honestly, I'll say this once and move on. The cost of this conflict is being spread across every apparel exporters, every retailers, and eventually every consumers on the planet. Every diplomatic window lasts about 48 hours before the next escalation closes it. Anyway, back to the business. If your supplier contracts were priced before March, you have a problem. The repricing conversation isn't optional anymore, it's overdue. Now let's move to the brand side, because the same pressure are showing up on the P&L statements of the brands, one tier upstream from those manufacturers. Birkenstock missed its quarter one revenue estimate slightly. The stock dropped over 10% in New York. The underlying constant currency growth of 14% isn't bad, but the gross margin compressed significantly in a single year. And the causes are clear: currency headwinds, US tariff pass-through, and geopolitical line item the CEO named directly. The Middle East conflict cost the company roughly 6 million euros in EMEA alone, half from undeliverable orders, half from weakened consumer confidence across Europe. The company held its full-year guidance, which is a signal of conviction. The market, for now, isn't buying it. This is the template for any premium brand with meaningful US and EMEA exposure. Tariffs on the import side, demand softness on the retail side, currency volatility in between. The brands navigating all three simultaneously without sacrificing growth, those are the ones worth watching closely. Same pattern but different segment. The luxury tier is running its own structural reset. And the data released this week makes the direction unmistakable. New luxury store openings hit their lowest level since 2020 last year. Bain estimates around 70 million luxury consumers have exited the category over 3 years. Kering alone closed a net 75 stores last year and plans to close 100 more this year, most of them in China, where its share of new luxury openings has roughly halved in 2 years. This isn't panic, this is deliberate. The playbook, and Dior, Gucci, Prada, all running versions of it, is fewer locations, larger footprints, and experiential layering, cafes, VIP floors, spas. Dior's New York flagship just added a spa. I've been watching this industry for over 25 years, and here's what this means for suppliers. When retail touchpoints shrink, but revenue per door is expected to rise, the demand signal changes. Fewer seasonal resets, smaller volumes, tighter specs. The supply chain consequences of fewer, bigger, better stores is fewer, more demanding, harder to replace supplier relationships. If you are not depending those now, you may find the door has already closed. Let me close with what's probably the most operational urgent story of the week. Chinese factories supplying major US retailers are raising prices, up to 5% for large accounts, up to 15% for smaller buyers. And they hit full annual capacity in mid-April, weeks ahead of normal. Christmas orders are being placed now, under pressure, but buyers who weren't ready for that conversation. If China is repricing holiday 2026 production, the question sourcing teams in Europe and the US are asking right now is, which alternate origins can absorb volume at speed without a 6 to 8 week ocean transit? That's the near-shore question. And it's the one where regional manufacturers in Türkiye, Morocco, Portugal, or Mexico will either prove they've invested in the right infrastructure or they'll watch the opportunity pass to someone who did. The main question I want to leave you today is, with raw material cost up to 30 to 60%, a major sourcing origin repricing its Christmas production, and luxury contracting its retail network simultaneously, are the suppliers who are counting on actually positioned to absorb what's coming in the next 2 quarters, or will you find it in quarter 4? That's all for today's analysis. To make sure you never miss the insights behind the numbers, hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast. I'm Sedat Sezer. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow, and until then, stay ahead of the curve.